Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is what I backed in February. And yes, I am fully aware that we are running pretty late, all things considered. It's been a packed month, jam-packed with a whole bunch of videos and stuff, and just trying to cram it all in. If you've noticed, the past few Saturdays have been completely overwhelmed. I may be switching things up exactly how I handle that, we'll see. That is neither here nor there. This is what I backed February, going through all the campaigns that captured my interest, the things I considered backing, and then whether I did or did not and why. And that's going to be the line in the sand. It's anything that at any point I had an idea, a thought, a desire to back it. Those are the things that make this list, and then I go through which ones I did, which ones I didn't, and why. And starting off, we're going to have Carnegie. Carnegie is going to be one that the designer alone is going to be the reason I paid. Oh, before we do that, one thing, I'm doing this slightly different than the past videos. It's no longer segmented into the things I didn't back followed by the things I did back. Instead, it's in alphabetical order, and I'll go through what I did or didn't do along the way, so slightly different than usual. But jumping back to Carnegie, Carnegie is going to be a heavy Eurofund designer, Xavier Georges, who, first of all, I just played Carson City again this past week, and it's so ridiculously good, to the point that I almost want to unback Carnegie, because time spent playing Carnegie is going to be time not spent playing Carson City. That said, I did back Carnegie because Carnegie was still a good puzzle. While not being Carson City, which is one of my favorite games, so it's not a fair comparison, Carnegie is going to deliver a heavy, meaty Euro experience that, for me, the thing that made or break it was the Kickstarter, was the extras that the Kickstarter brought to the table. Because the puzzle is all about building out your factory in a way that you can take your actions and activate your tableaus and take actions that help yourself and not others, because every single round across 20 rounds, each player will select an action when it's their turn, and that action will apply to everyone. So everyone's going to be forced to take that type of action, which means that you can be weaker or stronger in your development of your factory as to which actions will benefit you. Obviously, you want to make sure that the actions you take are stronger, but pay attention to which actions other people are developing, which of their strengths they are focusing on, because if you pay attention to that, you'll be able to plan and predict what will work well for yourself. The game works well. My biggest critique against it, I did a whole review on it, my biggest critique against it was that it wasn't variable. The core game was not variable enough. The core game, I got in a few plays and it felt very samey. So fine, but samey. And I like my Euros to not be an optimization puzzle of going through the same game again and again until you figure out the optimal pathways. I like my Euros to have variability so that I'm presented with a core system and I have to extrapolate and expand the way I utilize that core system every single game. I have to relearn every single game. That's how I prefer my own style of Euro games. And Carnegie, in the Kickstarter, in the whatever, they added tons more factories, tons more departments, tons more scoring bonuses, different things that mixed up that puzzle. So for me, this was a hard no on the base game alone, and a hard yes on the Kickstarter and the way they delivered content there. So I went ahead and backed Carnegie because of that. Next up, we had Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and this just goes to the idea that Kickstarter is a drug that has to be maintained, a drug that is unhealthy, because, I got rid of Castles of Mad King Ludwig a while ago, and I debated getting this back because core box, deluxeification, everything, and I didn't back it. Fortunately, I was able to hold strong because I realized I already had on my hit list Suburbia Collector's Edition because it's a great game, and I prefer it to Castle of Mad King Ludwig, but great games are left, right, and center these days, and it's no longer just about choosing the games that are great, the games that give me fond memories. Right now, it is about choosing the games that actually get pulled off my shelf, and Suburbia, as good as it is, as much as I enjoy it every single time, it doesn't get pulled off my shelf because it's not being asked for by myself, by others. It is a solid game that I already miss, but it's gone. And so Castle of Mad King Ludwig, which for me, even though for the majority of people, to a small degree, a majority of people, they prefer Castle of Mad King Ludwig, it was the upgraded version of Suburbia. I always preferred the original Suburbia, and so if I was getting rid of that collector's edition, there's no way in good conscience I can get Castle of Mad King Ludwig, the deluxe edition over here, even though I definitely wanted to. Moving on from there, we had Clinic Deluxe expansions, Clinic Deluxe extensions. Why don't you use the word expansion? Maybe it's a European versus American thing, I don't know. But in any case, Clinic is a game that is a heavy Euro game that I have on my shelf, and I wanted to get these extensions. I debated it because it's more fun stuff for a heavy, nice Euro game. But in the end of the day, my common sense, similar to Castle of Mad King Ludwig, my common sense held sound, and I chose not to get it because I haven't played the original. I don't always succeed. I try not to back expansions for games that I haven't played the original. Again, I do not always succeed, but you know, it is what it is either way. So I passed on these extensions. I decided not to get them. If I play the original and I love it, then I'll pick them up in the second-hand market. That was another thing as well. Another factor here is that these do not hold their value, so comparatively speaking, there's no loss. There's no incentive for me to jump on and I'll just sell it all down the road if I don't like it anyway. Moving on from there, we have CoraQuest. CoraQuest is one that I absolutely wanted to jump back. There's no question. This is one that Ricky and I did a review of, and this is going to be by Dan and Cora Hughes. This, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but essentially, this is a family-based, kid-based dungeon crawling experience, of which there are not many. There's Catacombs of Karak, I believe, and then that's basically it as far as I shouldn't say that's basically it. There'll be 4 comments down below, but all the ones I missed and don't know about. That's true. There are ones that I missed and don't know about. The Ghost Betwixt Us, which there's one person who keeps commenting on my videos to check that one out. I don't know anything about it. It might be family-friendly kid dungeon crawler, I don't know, but either way, CoraQuest is one that is absolutely delightful. This game was great, drawn by kids, illustrated by kids, deluxeified or garified by Gary, and this is one that they actually just announced they announced retail plans for the game. They're still trying to ensure that the cost or what's in the game still gives backers a reason to hold on to it. And I mentioned this when I did the Should You Back It on this, when I covered this in the roundup, I mentioned this. I said that this game is popular enough and has enough buzz, it will probably get picked up retail, but there's no guarantees and it's a bit of a risk, so you have to back accordingly. Or in this case, I mean, to me this is an easy back. This was what Kickstarter is made for. It's and keep in mind, when I say what Kickstarter is made for, I generally understand the idea that Kickstarter is made for small companies, but I often think that there's a compromise along the way of the end product. And I like the board games that are deluxeified and good and give you an amazing experience. And CoraQuest absolutely was both. It gave you an amazing experience. It wasn't, you know, miniature deluxeified, but it gave you an amazing experience, and it was a homegrown father-daughter project. Absolutely in love with this game. There's no question I was backing this one. Late pledge still available, but now factor into that there is guaranteed is a relative word, but they have announced a retail plans for this game. You'll be able to pick it up that way as well. Moving on from there, we have Cryptid Cafe. Cryptid Cafe is one that I definitely was interested in. This is the kind of game that my daughter would like, my wife would like, and again, I always be careful when I say this stuff because my wife likes a lot of these lighter games, and yes, you're starting to see this on the channel. She also will destroy me at a lot of the heavier games too. It's not like, oh, my wife likes lighter games. She likes both. But in any case, the Cryptid Cafe is one that looks fun, looks interesting. Ultimately, for this one, I passed on it just because it looks like it's the kind of thing that will be cheaper to get your hands on down the road. Granted, there's no guarantee of retail availability. With 1,500 backers, it's likely going to see retail, but no guarantees in terms of how that actually plays out. But I figure I'll keep my eye on that and or the secondhand market to eventually get my hands in it. But for right now, I held strong. Ultimately, it comes down to trying to keep that Kickstarter backing number down. Again, before content creation, I used to be at 2 or 3 Kickstarters a month, and since doing content creation, it has certainly grown, and I'm comfortable with the fact that it's grown. But there have been months where I backed 11 games, and I'm not comfortable with that. The math simply does not work out in terms of being able to keep games in my collection, play those games, and still be getting 11 new games a month. It just, math doesn't work there. So next up, we have Embryo Machine, which is another one that falls in the category of me just trying to have self-control. Ultimately, this one looked good. The actual gameplay, the art did not pull me in at all, but once I looked into it for the sake of covering for the channel, I looked into it more, and it did look good. It looked like a solid engine in terms of the mech experience. It looked like it had powers and abilities. It looked well fleshed out, asymmetric, lots of fun stuff going on here. But I wasn't as pulled in as much as I wanted to be. And so, meaning, again, lots of good reasons to back this one, lots of intriguing reasons to jump on this one. But I found reasons to also just not be pulled in, and like I said already, I'm looking for reasons not to back things. This is going to fall into the category of me trying to keep that backer number as low as possible, but it did look cool. It looked like the kind of thing I would totally like, and I'm just happy that I didn't back it. Moving on, we have Epic 7 Arise, the board game. This is one that I was super excited about. Well, super excited is the wrong term. I was excited about, not super, but excited. I was excited about this one until the campaign actually launched, because this is going to be Epic 7 Arise based on the app. It's going to be, based on the app experience, giving you a heavy anime, dungeon crawler-esque, upgrading powers and abilities style game. Overall, the miniatures look great, the art looks great, but the art also looks great in anime, and I'm not personally pulled in by anime. If anything, anime is a strike against the game. It does not mean I won't get it, but it's just a theme and a genre that does not pull me in the slightest. It's no different to me than a dry World War II theme. Meaning, it's not that I will not play the game. I mean, I just reviewed V Commandos, which I love, but rather it just doesn't pull me in thematically. And I mean, I know comparing anime to World War II is a weird contrast, but it's just two themes that don't really interest me. But overall, Epic 7 Arise, the gameplay did not look fleshed out for me to jump in on this one. The gameplay looked like it was procedural and did the same thing a lot of other games did, and the combination of a lack of the theme pulling me in and not seeing a gameplay reason why this was different, why this was special, why this one would do it where other games didn't, means that I just walked away from it. Could I have backed it? Totally. Would I have been potentially 100% happy with it? Very possibly. I have no idea, and we won't find out unless eventually I get my hands on a copy, because, well, if the reviews come in blazingly positive, you can bet that I'll try to get my hands on a copy on the secondhand market. But for right now, I was able to hold off on this one. So far, we're only at 2 backed. We're at Carnegie and CoraQuest so far. Let's see how we keep doing in that track. Next up, Human Punishment. Human Punishment is one that I am 100% interested in and will not get to the table, so I did not back this. Basically, or will not get to the table frequently. Basically, Human Punishment is going to be by Godot Games, and this is going to be almost a competitor to Battlestar Galactica in a sense, which means, on the one hand, that is something that I should totally be paying attention to, because I think Battlestar Galactica is one of the best experiences I have ever had in board games. I also think Battlestar Galactica is just too hard to get to the table, at least with my group. Now, the art in Human Punishment looks great. From most of the people who've played the game, I've heard nothing but good things. The gameplay looks very Battlestar Galactica-y, although potentially tweaked and smooth-lined and streamlined. I don't know. Until I play it, I don't know. But again, at the end of the day, Battlestar Galactica is a game that, as much as I liked it, I didn't get to the table, and I eventually moved on from it. Human Punishment, again, falls in the category of a game that may well be an amazing experience, that in the attempt to keep my backer number low, I passed on this one right now, just telling myself that it will not be played, it will not get to the table, and it wasn't worth backing right now. Will I eventually try it? Very possibly, especially if those reviews continue to come in solid. If it hits the market and people are just loving this game, it's possible I'll pick it up. My group does love hidden role games. My group does love that subterfuge, the intrigue, the manipulation that comes in games like this. But as far as whether this one will be for us right now, we'll have to wait and see. I did not back it this time around. Still 2. And here we get to number 3. This is the third one I backed in February. Maquis? I can't remember. Or was it Maquis? I know I expressed the fact that I couldn't remember whether it's Maquis or Maquis, and I know I got comments clarifying. I don't remember at the time which way it was, but either way, this game is going to be the second edition, and this is going to be a solo worker placement experience that I wasn't planning on backing this one. In fact, even financially, there's no huge incentive to back it. You're going to talk about like the difference between $5-10 difference between picking this up at retail versus getting it on the Kickstarter. But it looked interesting, and I know people who've played it, and they had nothing but good things to say about it. I checked out ratings, I looked into it more. Generally, I find that lighter solo experiences have an easier time hitting the table for me. Lighter solo experiences that play in roughly half an hour and give you an interesting puzzle of the way of manipulating things, of Under Falling Skies, So You've Been Eaten that I just reviewed, what else, the Sprawlopolis, the many lighter solo games that I enjoy getting to the table, and I believe that Maquis or Maquis, one of those two, will join those ranks in terms of being something that's an interesting puzzle that I have to figure out and play, or alternatively it won't be for me. Either way, but this was number 3 out of 5. Next up, we have Mob Big Apple. Mob is one that I was originally planning on backing, a 2-player area control game by Steve Finn, a re-implemented version of Capo di Cape. I think it was Capo di Capo. It might have been another one. There's a few of these games, but it was a reprinted version of another game, streamlined, changed the rules, improved the production quality. So it took a core experience and made it better, which for a game that was already pretty decent, I am intrigued by. And 2-player games that are in this half an hour range with area control are another thing that frequently hit the table. I find 2-player games that are 3 hours long don't hit the table, but 2-player games in a short sweet spot 100% do hit the table a lot in my collection. And so I was intrigued by this one. I wanted to get it. Ultimately, I passed on this one because I didn't see enough of a reason to pick it up now as opposed to waiting till retail. As the campaign developed, they did add some extras, so there were more reasons to cover it than initially in the initial. I think in the initial campaign they had like a badge or something. That's something small. It wasn't gameplay. That didn't give me a reason to back it. But as the campaign progressed, they added extra things. I believe they painted or whatever it is, washed these various tokens or crates. Don't take my word for this. I don't remember exactly what they added mid-campaign, but they did add more stuff to give you a reason to back it. Ultimately, I'm still interested in the game. I still plan on checking it out, but for right now, I'm waiting till retail on this one. Next up, we had Paper Apps Dungeon, which I did not back because this one looked incredibly cool. 4,300 people backed this game, $100,000 for what effectively is a procedurally generated paper-based app experience where you just go through a little solo puzzle. And I know this goes counter to what I just said about Sprawlopolis, Under Falling Skies, Maquis, and all those kinds of games. But overall, this one, as much as I thought the puzzle was intriguing, I was also concerned that the gameplay was not remotely balanced. I was concerned that the gameplay, being procedurally generated and what it's trying to do, is an interesting thought experiment, no different than... You ever play that game? There's a game a long time ago I used to play. Oh wow, I want to play it now. Where you have a 10x10 grid of little boxes, and you can either diagonal jump or go for... You can either jump one diagonally or jump 2 in a line, and then the goal is to walk around the entire grid filling it in. It's a fun little thing to do, but it has a limit to the enjoyment it provides. It has a limit to the depth it provides, and I thought that this game, that Paper Apps, is going to give me a tiny paper dungeon, or was it paper dungeon or paper apps? Paper Apps Dungeon. I thought it would give me a similar experience to that. Something that's fun, something that's interesting, but only for, you know, a day or two, and then I move on to other games that give me more of an experience. I think anyone who backed this, I mean, again, it's $5-10. You're not talking about a lot of money here, but I'm curious how it plays out. I'm curious whether this is actually an excellent, enjoyable experience, or a light thing to do when you're bored, and that's about it. Could go either way on that. Next up, we go to Pingyao, the Chinese banks, and this is one, again, I held off on this one. I was actually surprisingly pulled in by this one. This is 548 backers. I had no interest in backing this originally, just the sheer cost to what you're getting, and the lack of me being pulled in visually by the game. I wasn't pulled in by the art at all. It looked okay, it looked fine, but it was expensive. You're talking about $60 to $90, or $60 to $120, depending on the pledge level, depending on the extras you're getting, for a game that did not look great, and didn't have a ton of buzz, a ton of pull, even though it had fairly solid testimonials. And then I played the game because they reached out, they gave me a playthrough of the game, and I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was an excellent experience that I was intrigued about adding to my collection. The combination of price point and the fact that I have so many other Euros that I need to play, I need to get to the table, and just not being pulled in visually still held me back in the end. Now, this one very much is on my radar. Like many others that I've talked about today, this is one that I'm still paying attention to. This is one that I'm still interested to see whether I'll get it down the road. I mean, once it hits retail, if it hits retail, or where it's available, or perhaps a secondhand market, I'm still paying attention to this one. The gameplay genuinely was solidly fun. I just have a lot of other solidly fun games that I'm not playing enough as it is, as well as solidly fun games, or potentially solidly fun games, that I haven't gotten to the table. My unplayed games list keeps climbing. I'm trying to keep it in control, and I chose not to add Pingyao to that list. And again, that Kickstarter backer number, keeping that down as well. Moving on, the big one. This is number 4 of 5, and this is going to be Primal: The Awakening. When I did what I backed January, I got multiple questions. But you thought you backed Primal. You love Primal. You are right. I do love Primal. But Primal ended in February. I'm pretty sure it ended in February. Let's take a look at this over here. We can go to the updates. The updates has it ending February 2nd, which means this list, which I probably should have said at the beginning of the video, but this list is always based on the end date of a campaign, because sometimes I do change my mind throughout the process. Sometimes the things are added or taken away or adjusted, or I just have second thoughts or self-control. So I wait until it actually is in the end date range so I can say with confidence what I did or didn't do. Granted, there's always late pledges, but that's a story for another day. But Primal is going to be one of my highlights of 2021. I say that with no question. Even depending on how 2021 goes, this is still going to be one of my highlights of 2021. By the way, along with Wild Ascent, which is blowing me away as well. There are games that are good, there are games that are amazing, there are games that are absolutely incredible experiences. Primal, to me, was that third category. It was a game that gave me the puzzle that I want out of a game. The miniatures and the experience and the depth and the upgrading and the powers, the abilities, the puzzle, every single thing combined into exactly the kind of gameplay experience I am looking for in a game. And I'm so excited. Granted, I'm excited about Monster Hunter World as well. Monster Hunter World coming from, I always forget their names. What is their name? Steamforged Games, coming from Steamforged Games, Monster Hunter World, and we have Primal: The Awakening. Primal just was so good. It was so good. I'm not saying back this game. This game was expensive. It was expensive. The entry point for this game was effectively $200 once you accounted for shipping. That is a hurtful thing to bite off. And you haven't played the game. You don't know if you'll like the game. Sure, I like it. Sure, other people like it. Does not mean you will like it, and that is a factor in your decision. And I get that. But the problem is this is not going to be available at retail. They may have a second Kickstarter. This one did well enough, and it was a good enough game that I very much see this following the Madara, the Deep Madness approach of it landing, people getting all hyped and buzzed, and people being, oh wow, it wasn't just a bunch of content creators selling the next game. It was an amazing and incredible experience, and I am so happy I backed this game. And that leads to the wave 2. The wave 2 of people who want to get their hands on this game, who are like, oh wow, I just played it at my friend's house, it was amazing, or these people on Facebook can't stop talking about it, and these Board Game Geek threads, and look at that rating climb, and look at it jumping, and slowly but surely, and then all the existing owners want expansion content, they want more stuff, because it's not like they have anyway gone through the other stuff that they already have. I mean, the amount of monsters and heroes you have, there's no way you went through that yet. But they'll want more stuff anyway, because we all have a problem, and that means Primal 2.0 or Primal the Expansion or Primal the whatever is primed to hit Kickstarter in, a year and a half, 2 years down the road. Now, I'm saying this with absolutely zero knowledge of any plans for them to do so, for Reggie Games to do so. But I can't imagine that not happening given the way this will play out. and that's going to be Primal. Moving on, we had Radlands. Radlands is 100% a game I am interested in, 100% a game I will pick up. This is a 2-player game that got pretty decent reviews all across the board from the content creators who put out content, and it looks beautiful, looks gorgeous, and it's a fun, simple card game for 2 players. That should be fun, right? It also had a price tag on Kickstarter of basically $40 to $50. And as much as I love Roxley, and I do love Roxley, they put out some of the most deluxeified games that I have. Brass Birmingham, the original Santorini. What else do they have? Steampunk Rally, which I no longer have, but is still incredibly deluxeified. But Roxley puts out incredibly premium game experiences. Dice Throne. Dice Throne is a game that I got rid of eventually, but it was very hard to get rid of it because it was so gorgeous, it was so pretty, it was so well done. And so Radlands is going to fall into that category, but I'll wait till it hits retail, and I'll see about getting the $15 version that doesn't come with the box, or potentially picking up secondhand market as well. If I like the game enough, I'm happy to pay through the nose for it, even if I'm paying more than what I think is worth. But I haven't played the game, and I don't know if I like it, and I was reluctant to pay $40, $50 for what is essentially 100 cards in a 2-player experience. And so that ultimately is Radlands, one I did not back, but one that I was interested in. 2 left. And this is the last one that I backed, which is going to be Reload. Reload brings me at 5 Kickstarters for February, and Reload is one that I'm not sure about, to be clear. I actually got to play a game, I got to play a game on TTS, but I'm not sure whether this is one that's going to stay in my collection or not, because what I can tell you with confidence is Reload felt different. In terms of comparing games against games and seeing which one feels better, does area control better, does Euro better, does whatever better, Reload felt like a different experience, bringing you a, what's that term, it's called, I can't remember the term. The Battle Royale, bringing Battle Royale sort of to your desk, to your table, whatever, in a game that mimics the feelings of slowly eliminating each other, getting points or score. You don't actually eliminate, there's no player elimination, but you do get points, and you go up these rankings, and the audience cheers for you, and you deliver things, and you hit people, and you kill people. You get all these different things that fill your battle meter, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most points, the most filled battle meter, will win the experience. Now, Reload did feel, to a certain extent, like a Battle Royale. Again, there's no player elimination, so it doesn't have that, but it did have that aspect of running around the map, trying to engage with different things in different ways. Now, what I played was the simplest version of the game without enough extras that make the map experience interesting. So I was intrigued by the game. I thought it was interesting enough. It was interesting enough that I backed the game to get a copy to see how it plays out. But it's one that at the same time, enough things about the game I wasn't sold on it. I think it's a solid game. I want to play it more. I want to see where it goes. I was not yet sold, but I was certainly intrigued in this one. This is one of 2 things is going to happen. I'm either going to get this game and it's going to be like, wow, that was an incredible game, very unique, very different, thrilled to have this in my collection. Or I'm going to move on from it because it's good and different, but not good enough or different enough. Well, it's definitely different enough, but it might not be good enough. Now, one of the things it did well, though, is it gave me a fighting game for 3 to 4 players that plays in the 45-minute range, which in general, I find that my games that are in that style of game generally are longer. So the playtime as well as the different feeling are the reasons I was intrigued by the game and curious to see how it goes in my collection. And lastly, we have Tinner's Trail. Tinner's Trail is going to be the last one on this list, and this is one that I am 100% interested in, and again, chose not to back it, chosen to potentially get my hands on a copy down the road. Tinner's Trail is a game that I did own once upon a time, the original version by Martin Wallace, and I thought it was an excellent game, and one that I did move on from at a certain point because Martin Wallace has a lot of excellent games, and this one was not as excellent as some of the other excellent games that he has that I still own in my collection. Now, the second edition of the game does add things to the game. It does add, it adds things to increase the variability. It adds things to slightly change up the experience, to mix it up in a way that may well make this a better game for you. It may take Tinner's Trail, let's just use random numbers here. Let's pretend that my favorite Martin Wallace games are 9s. Tinner's Trail was probably a 7. Now, if Tinner's Trail gets bumped up to an 8 or a 9 as a result of the changes that go on in this expansion, in this updated edition of the game, then yeah, I'll get it back because I already liked it. I already thought it was great. Just other games were better. And so we'll see how this one goes. Ultimately, I passed on it during the Kickstarter, again, trying to keep my backs low, as well as the fact that I didn't see enough of incentive to pick this up in the Kickstarter versus waiting to retail. It was a fine back. It was not a bad back, but it was an okay one. I'm happy to wait. I'm happy to see how things go, to see how the market receives it, whether people are still talking about this, whether it receives the treatment that Brass did, of Brass being a great game, that Brass Birmingham and Lancashire elevated it in terms of just how many people wanted it, liked it, and the gameplay experience. If Tinner's Trail can do the same thing, I will 100% pick this up. And that's going to be this February. That's going to be all the stuff I backed in February. 5 games. We have what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different games that I was tentatively interested in backing. Only 5 which that I did, which for me is pretty decent, all things considered. Until next time, I'll see you all in March with what I backed or didn't back in March. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.